Cruelty, brutality rocks Cameroon's armed conflict. A conflict which started in 2016 simply with the teachers and the lawyers demanding for reforms at the different sectors. It quickly metamorphosed into a full-blown armed conflict in 2018. And we are witnessing cruelty, brutality, intimidation, backbiting, kidnapping, adoption, and just to name but these. It is a common cliche to hear in Cameroon, as most of those supporting the different factions will say we are in a state of war, while others will say we are restoring peace in the hardest hit area in the north and southwest region. Regardless of where you stand as to whether you are restoring peace into the north and southwest region, or you are advocating for a restoration of the former British Southern Cameroon, there is one thing that must be clear, that the respect of rules of engagement is of topmost priority and importance. It is no news to hear those from the separatist group will tell you we are in a state of war, and it is no news for those in the Cameroon's government struggling to restore peace in the restrictive region of north and southwest region to tell you we are fighting terrorism in the north and southwest region. Even if you are fighting terrorism or you are looking for the other way around, there is what we call the respect of principles of war and principle of fighting against terrorism. That is a respect of human rights and freedom and respect of various conventions. There is nothing in life that does not have principles and guidelines. War has its principles and guidelines, and those principles and guidelines is ought to protect the innocent civilians and those who are suppressed. The non-state armed groups will tell you that they are the oppressed, and the government will tell you that they are fighting against terrorism. The truth of the matter here is that both parties are the oppressed as they continue to oppress the civilians within the north and southwest region. The common man in Gokitunja, in Pete, in Mabunji, in Donga and Mountain Division, in Way Village, Wum, Widikum, want to go back to school, and yet it is no news to them that they are being stopped from going to school. Stopping them from going to school is an act of oppression, and that you are oppressing the right of those who want to go to school. There are others who want to do their businesses within the north and southwest region. On Monday and some days they are being asked not to at gunpoint, and this is an act of oppression. We cannot equally refute the fact that in some circumstances these people have been protected and have not been harmed, but generally we continue to see intimidation, we continue to see cruelty, brutality in the name of restoring the former British Southern Cameroon. On the other hand, the state armed groups too equally cannot be just given an A pass in terms of how they take their action in restoring peace in the north and southwest region, where witness collective punishment, general harassment, intimidation, arrest, and people have to pay money before they are freed, even with their identification cards which they have on them. In some circumstances, we witness houses and business complex result in flame by the same people who ought to protect those whom they are sent to protect. You hear they say they were doing it in the context of struggling to reunite the country and to fight against terrorism. And these are the cruelty and brutality we see on both sides. Regardless of how it goes, the common man is feeling the heat, and it is the common man that keeps suffering. How long shall the common man continue to suffer in the senseless war that should have been called to stop at the beginning of the conflict? And how sure are those who are fighting this war in terms of the ending of the war? One thing should be clear in their mind, that they will have to face the dance of justice. And when the Geneva Convention was signed, it was not just signed because of the General First World War that is emancipated within 1914, or the Second World War, or other wars like the Persian War and the Cold War. It was signed because of conflicts which may arise in other regions like in Cameroon, in the Central African Republic, in Chad, and other localities within the world. But sadly enough, we have not seen the respect of Geneva Convention being respected by those who are advocating and those who are fighting to restore peace in the north and southwest region. A case in hand is that of Treasure, who was brutally killed in the northwest region. The young lady is just aged 22. She was slaughtered just like any other, like that of Ayafo Florence, who was equally slaughtered. And we have the recent case is Christopher, a humanitarian aid worker who was slaughtered. A young girl in Kumba was equally buried alive. We move now to Baby Mata was shot in Muyuka. We have Wazizi Samuel was killed while in detention, or some say he died of helplessness. Regardless of how you call it, we have circumstances where Sam Sawyer was killed. These are just the numerous stories, and there are others which we don't know that is occurring within the north and southwest region. This is House of Commons, and the motion for today is cruelty and brutality dominate armed conflict. Where are we going to And when will all this end, as a common man is caught between the devil and the deep blue sea? My name is Tamai Jarvis. I'll be right back. You're welcome back from that break. If you are just joining us, you're watching House of Commons. It is the program that is tailored towards giving you objective analysis as to recent happenings plaguing the issues around the country, specifically in Cameroon, and looking at the north and southwest region in particular. Our guests are here to make it. We want to apologize for the late start on today's edition of our program. As Snowboy said in one of the book, Animal Farm, with me or not with me, life goes on the same. We are yet to connect with one of our guests on Skype who will be joining us as the discussion unfolds. But here in the studio, we have one of those who is a member of MP3 movement. Mr. Prince, you're welcome to the program. You've been here consistently.
Thank you very much, Jarvis. Good morning to all televiewers within and out of the national territory. Good morning to all those who are watching us from Yaoundé, from Tico, from Boya, and everywhere. So thank you very much, Jarvis. The matter at hand is a very serious one concerning this Anglophone crisis, which has escalated. This crisis that began in 2016 like a joke, and most people thought it was something which will not last for a day or a month or a year. But where are we today? Today we are in 2020, and there's no sign of any redress, or there's no sign of it going to end anytime soon. When we look at the issue at hand, the killings and the brutalities that have been ranging the northwest and the southwest region, but not forgetting, because most of the time we talk about the northwest and southwest. It's true, the motion for today is to look at that, the brutality, but I just want to extend, because Cameroon is one, and despite the form of states which we all think, and with our different ideology, our different mindsets, but we still remain one national territory. Therefore, it pushes me to also talk about those of our brothers in the north, the far north of the country, which has also, they have also been since I think theirs is for about 7 years now, with the Boko Haram and other mismanagement of public funds and the like. But coming back to the motion, talking about this, the brutality.
Yeah, we're coming back to the motion. We're coming back to the motion. I am just welcoming you for the program. I think before we move to the motion, it's pending enough, or is very important for us to have a quick look as to what is making news in Africa, around the globe. Recently, we have the president of Cote d'Ivoire, Alassane Ouattara, who came out and said that he will not be seeking another mandate. That is his third mandate, that he will be handing over to a youth which, according to him, should be able to take the affairs of the nation and move the nation in the current dispensation, because we are in a constantly changing world. Not long, he's appointed or handpicked his prime minister, who is not a youth, who actually has been the former minister of defense for some time. As things will unfold, the prime minister died. Later on, just a few days ago, Ouattara came back and said it is a force majeure. That's why he's coming to run again for the presidency of Cote d'Ivoire.
Thank you very much, Jarvis. Who are we talking about here? That's Alassane Ouattara, 68 years old, the president of Cote d'Ivoire. Remember, he took power in 2010-2011 from Laurent Gbagbo, the other president who was at the ICC, at the International Court of Justice. Alassane Ouattara is a very hard-working man. Before he took over power from in Cote d'Ivoire, he has served at the International Monetary Fund and served at the West African Bank and the like, and he had responsible positions, and which he lived up to his obligations. So he want to seek a third term is not really a surprise to me and many others out there today, because from 2016, where he took over himself, and with the aid of other hands to revise the constitution, the Ivorian constitution. At that time, from that time, there was a lot of dust in the air, even though most people believed in him and what he actually said, that he is a man of the people. But now, the problem is 2000 and I think later, just some few months ago, he actually came up and said, if not last year, yeah, he came up and said he won't be running again for the elections, the 31st October polls, which is coming up. And this was highly saluted by the president of France, who said actually that he salute the courage and the decision taken by Alassane Ouattara as a statesman, and this decision is will go far to maintain peace, which therefore means that the international community and France, which is the father of Cote d'Ivoire, thinks so much that before now that if Alassane Ouattara doesn't present himself anymore, it means that Cote d'Ivoire is going to have peace. Why? Because the people don't only look at what he has done. It's true, he has done a lot for the people, for the Ivorian people, but they want a fresh blood, a young person, which he himself woke up and said, okay, fine, I'm going to get a new person to replace me. Whom he took Koulibaly. And he was supposed to be successor.
The question
on the 8th of July 2020, Koulibaly left. He died, unfortunately. And he wasn't a young person like I said before. He died, and suddenly he has come up now to say he wants to run again.
Because now the problem is many people could be pointing fingers that maybe Koulibaly was killed.
No, he wasn't. He was sick. Let's be frank. He may be well. That's their opinion, but the thing is, he was sick. The problem is not whether he doesn't have a successor or what. The problem is with us African, our institutions are not strong at all. Because why do I say so? The problem, Ouattara running in for the next presidential election is constitutional, as most people say is unconstitutional. It's constitutional. Why do you look at Article 55 of the Ivorian Constitution, which actually gives him, it says the president can run in for not more than one term, not so. When did that constitution come into place? 2016. And remember, there is what is known as the non-retroactivity of the law, and which ties with Article 138 of the Ivorian Constitution, which this article further states that constitution moves forward and doesn't go retroactive, which therefore means Alassane Ouattara is considered as per the new constitution to be taking the first term. So therefore the second term is still a very guaranteed. And yes?
People are not looking at the aspect of the constitution. First, the constitution was not made known. This change or modality or modification of the constitution was not made known to Ivorians. No. And second, nobody forced Ouattara to come and do a public address, a State of the Union address, that he will not be running again for the presidency of Cote d'Ivoire. And nobody. And thirdly, he said he will be handing power to the youth. To see that it was not a youth that was handpicked is a concern. Is there not a problem with Africa? And he says it's a force majeure. Now let's get down to the context of force majeure. A force majeure simply means it's an act where there is danger, there is a problem where the state will fall into chaos, and if the state will fall into chaos, you come to remedy the situation. But what chaotic nature are we seeing in Cote d'Ivoire that he's calling it a force majeure?
Thank you very much. That's why I said we have a problem. Most of our institutions, most of the African nations, our institutions are very gullible. These are institutions which don't really have the value they seek to, and they are supposed to portray. Why do I say so? The constitution was revised. The problem is not like the people did not want, they were not concerned. When the constitution was revised, how many people, now that he has said he wants to take a new mandate, now you see so many people have come up, the opposition supporters, Gbagbo and the other people, Soro and the like, they've come up to protest. But when the revision of constitution was taking place, what did they actually say? That is the problem, because we have to understand the fact that every state is governed by the law. Every state is governed by, and the supreme fundamental norm of every state is the constitution. Hans Kelsen said it. Okay. It is the gross norm of this. So we are following the law. We shouldn't be talking like people who talk around the country, because most of the opposition,
but they are holding him by his word.
Yes, no.
They are protesting by his word, not by the constitution.
Look. We his words, not so, is not permanent. Because he's the president. If today the president of Cameroon said tomorrow, the president has promised so many things to Cameroon. I want to take the case of Cameroon and not so. When the coronavirus came up, that was an unforeseen.
Are you supporting Ouattara's decision to go in? Because again,
there is some sort of.
Maybe I know we will soon.
The thing with Africans is that most at times we put blames on other people, of which we are the original problem.
No, I know. We'll soon move away from this topic, but briefly, I want to recap to you. I want to recap again the context of a force majeure. The force majeure, by the definition, is an act of. It's an act that there's an action, there's danger that's coming, and for example, which is no fault of yours, no fault of mine, but we have to shut down. And because of the fact that we have to shut down, some drastic decisions have to be taken. And he's saying, I am doing that because there's a force majeure. First, the nation is in peace. Second, the nation is running. Thirdly, is there a possibility that he sees that maybe there's a war in Cote d'Ivoire that is coming? A force majeure should be war, or there should be protest. That's why it's coming to stabilize. The word force majeure, I'm looking at force majeure here, not just the fact that he has the right to come back.
Yes.
The choice of word.
Let me come to that point, Lord. You've defined the word force majeure, and you think he did not want to run in again for the presidential election because they want an alternative, not so. Because when he said I was going to hand over to a young man, and he talked, and most people perceived he talked about Koulibaly, not so. Did the people protest? Was Koulibaly a young man? Did the people protest? No. Which therefore brings to mind the fact that the awareness that the people are not just there to only see a young man, but they want to see a change. Okay, they wanted a change of government. Now, what were his reasons to pass on? Because he thinks Koulibaly is somebody he has worked with, he has nurtured, and mindful of the fact that Ivory Coast has gone through a lot of civil war and a lot of problems, which he came up and has tried. Because we shouldn't forget the fact that Ouattara has done a lot. The evolution under his reign could not be compared with that of Gbagbo or with it. So we have to understand that with him, I am not supporting his fact, but what I'm trying to say is that this opposition, or Africans as a whole, the general population of Africa and Cote d'Ivoire in particular, have to be very cautious when they take decisions, because what he wants to do, I really want to say, following the right directive is a force majeure. But the problem is not at the level of the force majeure. The problem is at the level of he going above that.
So there's no other person that could rule Cote d'Ivoire.
That is where I am coming to. That is where I am coming. No, that is where I am coming to, and that is where he has a problem. Because we have to look at this problem on two backgrounds, not to permit me, on two backgrounds: the legal background and the moral background. So the legally he is permitted to go in for the next election, but morally we have to look at what the situation which Cote d'Ivoire has been going through, the wars and the like, and the one an alternative. We know after Gbagbo was being removed from power, he was taken to the ICC, not so, and most of his supporters back there are still grumbling, and owing to the fact that just of recent he was being released, acquitted by the ICC, and he is free to go home, but free to go home to which home? Because just a few months back, the Ivorian court, national court, conjudged Gbagbo and Blaise Goudet for what? Blaise Goudet for crimes of robbery of the Central West African Central Bank and so on. They gave them 20 years, which actually prohibits them from coming back to the country. Remember, their passport was being seized. They applied for a new passport in the Belgian, the Ivorian, how do you call it? The Ivorian consulate in Belgium, and they have not been given so far. And the ICC or the Belgian government has also asked Gbagbo to leave the country. This now has raised tension in the country, because the Ivorian constitution also provides that Gbagbo in Article 22 that no Ivorian may be forced to stay out of the Ivorian national territory. So that is a tension which is not only him. Guillaume Soro is another part. So this may raise tension. That is why Gbagbo has to look at Ouattara has to look at the fact that it is beyond constitution, it's beyond the constitution, but for the well-being of the Ivorian people, he has to take a decision far more than that, and that is why I salute the decision of Mewe, the musician, who had that boast, that drive, that push to come up, that effrontery to come and talk to the people, because that is what we have to do.
Time is fast running out. I think let's come now to our topic of discussion: cruelty, brutality, rocks or dominates Cameroon's armed conflict. It's common for us to hear the cliche that we are in a state of war when the non-state armed groups are talking. But living in that state of war doesn't mean that the principle governing the same state of war should not be respected. That is the Geneva Convention. Treasure in Bamenda was brutally murdered, slaughtered by alleged non-state armed groups. And of course, we've had situations like that of Christopher, who was shot for questioning the heavy-handedness of the non-state armed groups in terms of not respecting human rights and freedom. We've seen situations where people are buried alive, like a young lady who was buried alive in Kumba. We've seen other situations where people are being kidnapped just on the basis that they have relatives who are affiliated or fighting with the Cameroon's defense forces. We've seen situations where people are being killed just because they have, or they are dating Cameroon security forces, or they have families who are married to Cameroon security forces. And we have situations where people have been kidnapped simply because they had once worked with the Cameroon security forces. And these are just the numerous claims. I begin first with you. Prince Louis. The situation of the armed conflict. We understand that there's an armed conflict going on, but does that mean that rules of engagement should not be respected by the non-state armed groups?
Thank you. We have to start by looking at why is it that these acts of vandalism, brutality is persisting. It's escalating. That is where we have to start from. We have to look at the actors in place. We have to look at the reasons why it is persisting. Now, Florence Ayafo, which is one of the main propagandists of the government, because she was an officer of the law, a wardress, and you have the baby, you have Ngabu. We are talking about brutality. Brutality doesn't leave out all those.
No, I'm coming. I'm looking at. I'm coming. For my introduction, I talked about both sides brutality. But first, let's start with the recent case of Treasure. Where are we in a conflict that we claim we are defending the rights of Anglophones? Does it mean that the rules of engagement should not be respected because we are in a state of war?
The rules of engagement. What are the rules of engagement? Who are those involved? The rules of engagement, you talk about when you have a problem, a war or internal conflict, not so, you have to respect the civilians. You have to respect the civil and fundamental rights of the civilians, which is the obligations of the military and the separatists. The separatists have a cause they have put forth. We want an independence, we want an Amazonian republic. The government says, no, we cannot give you this. Now, the problem has escalated because the separatists have picked up arms. The government itself is not willing to actually give them the reason, or is not actually willing to give them that so freely. So, with this, we see that there are casualties. And who are these casualties? They are the civilians. Who are these civilians? Those living in the northwest and the southwest, those living in Kwakwa, those living in Balikumbat, those living in Bafanji, those living in Kumba, and so on and so forth. What are the rules that are in place? You don't need to burn down hospitals. You don't need to go to a hospital. You don't need to fight around the hospital. You don't need to shoot people around the hospital. You don't need to touch civilians. Not so, because those fall under the crimes put forward by the Rome Statutes. You have crimes against humanity, genocide, and so on and so forth. Now, don't we need to respect these rules? Of course, it is an obligation for them to respect these rules. But why are they not respecting these rules? That is where we find ourselves. What is the reason? What is actually causing them not to respect these rules? We have the two parties. You have the separatists on the side, you have the government. Why are the separatists not respecting these rules? This is some of the reasons is because, I will start with first. Most of them, or some of them, are making a lot behind the conflict. Some of them are using the conflict to settle their scores. Others are there to try to see if they can push their revolution forward, the Amazonian revolution.
But my problem is, Prince, before you continue, my problem is, you are fighting. They say they are fighting for Anglophones. and they say we are in a state of war. In that state of war, isn't it a priority to respect the same rules of engagement you have defined that you are in a state of war? Like this, if that lady, let's say that lady was a supposed spy, does she deserve that way to be killed?
That is what I was trying to say, or that is what I'm saying. What actually pushed them? Because before now, when in 2016, 2017, I think early 2016, late 2016, early 2017, we didn't see all these type of acts of vandalism, which therefore means as the crisis is pushing forward, something is actually causing them to change their strategies or to change their way, their manners of pushing the revolution forward. And the problem is, what is actually pushing them to do that? Because they call you black leg. What is black leg? Who is a black leg? Why do they do they tax someone black leg? And what are the punishments that they actually mount on a black leg? That is where we find ourselves now. So, in order to understand this, if they have to do this or they don't need to do that, if they actually they need it, was it an obligation? Was it really necessary for them to go to that point? You must start by looking at the reasons why it is still persisting.
I don't want to look at the reasons. I want for you are a political you are a member of a political party, MP3.
Of course.
Now, what is MP3 stand as far as, because we've not seen parties condemning the action of the killing of treasure by the non-state armed group. But if this military or the Cameroon government had carried out the act, it would have been a well-rehearsed song from all belligerents, from all the political parties. Why are parties silent?
The movement,
I've not seen that even from their party.
The movement for patriotism and people's prosperity, the MP3, is that party who is behind the people, is that party which seeks to actually recognize the citizenship, which seeks to look at the freedom of the citizens, which to look at the engagement of the citizens vis-a-vis that of the government, not so. So these acts have actually been condemned. The MP3 has taken visitor. We've actually put out a communique condemning this act. It doesn't. Well, we started with that of treasure, not so. There's so many more. That of Christopher, which happened I think yesterday. We have also condemned, and so many of them. The Ngabo we did. So it is not a place to come and support one person because you, like you said, most people always condemn the government. The government. No, when we actually seek to look at who is at fault. And we don't want to take one part, because tomorrow the MP3 will be in power. So what will happen if we are in power?
I was just about coming to ask you the same question, because we've not seen the MRC condemning this act. We've not seen the Social Democratic Front coming out fully condemning the killing of treasure. We've not seen other political parties coming forward to say, hey, the killing of treasure is wrong and must be accountable, and those who have done this should be accountable. We saw how everybody came out full-fledged to advocate for that of Samuel Wazizi. We saw how that on Ngabo. We've seen that of Baby Mata. We've seen partially of Florence Ayafo. Maybe it's because it's committed by the non-state armed groups. Does it mean that the went forth committed by the non-state armed groups are supposed to be given little or less attention as far as forth committed as compared to forth committed by the state armed groups? I'm just asking this to you because soon your party will maybe become
we will
maybe your party may become the leading political party in Cameroon.
Is just tomorrow.
And what if the same military that you control is being used or is being questioned as of now?
Of course, you began by asking, but why is it that more and more political parties are not coming up to condemn? To that, I want to tell you, most of the time you see people come up and say what they're saying, but to be honest, most of these political parties, especially those I don't want to most of these political parties, they don't have a first-hand information of what is happening in the ground. So what they actually do is, I think what majority of them actually do is they go to the newspapers, they look at they ask information from one or two people, but that is what actually limits their information, getting information about the crisis. We of the MP3, we visited. I've been to the north. Last week we were in Bamenda. We've been to the southwest. We visited so many of these areas. That is why we are able to communicate in line and day-to-day activities of this crisis. We don't only limit ourselves to the Anglophone crisis. We move ahead to look at that in the north and the general problems affecting the country. Why are most of them not actually they don't come in time. They don't actually put, because it's not like they don't condemn you. If you look critically, you realize that most of them condemn after a week, 2
hard.
What actually, it is in your place. It's not my party. My party does theirs, and I tell you the means which we do that. So most of them, the reason is because they don't have a first-hand information. They don't really understand what is happening in the ground. I went to the Northwest. I tell you, it is when I visited the Northwest and the South, it made it an obligation for me to understand and to be more concerned, because when I was there, what I actually saw with my eyes, it is what I think in about 1 year or 2 years to come, most people living in the French part of the country, in Douala, Yaoundé, North, and so on, they will ask themselves, they'll open their eyes and say, is this what was happening to us?
I'm coming back to you. We've just been joined via Skype by one of our panelists who is coming on this edition. We've been expecting him because of the fact that we've had difficulties in getting him on Skype. Good afternoon and welcome to the program, Elvis Banen.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, and to all the panelists there on my Prime TV. I must say it's a pleasure for me connecting with you.
Yeah, Elvis Banen, please, could you, we'll be coming back to you. Could you just rotate your phone to the 90 degrees perspective so that we have a full screen as far as that is concerned? While our technicians struggle to handle that, we'll come back to you. Let me move to the man in the studio.
So like I was saying, most of these political parties don't have, and majority of the Cameroonians don't have a mastery of what is happening in the floor. Even the newspapers, they don't know what is happening. That is why it's difficult for them to actually condemn the both parties. Most of them either come, most at times they condemn the government, at times they condemn the separatists. When you look at most of the newspapers and the TV stations around the French part of the country, you realize that they mostly condemn the separatists. And you look at these other media houses of Anglo-Saxon origin, of the English section, they mostly, some of them are, they go the two way. They condemn the separatists, they condemn the government, but majority are to condemn the government and the separatists. So with that, you realize that those living in most of the French part of the country, they have little knowledge about it. That is the reason. But looking at this, the issue of Treasure and the other people, why is it that is escalating? Did they have to go to that extent to do that? It is because I think some of the reasons why they do this, which is not called for, which is unacceptable. We say it is unacceptable. This because most of their strategies which they employed from the onset has been failing them, among other reasons, like I said, settling private issues.
I'll be coming
making
back to
a lot from it.
I'll be coming to you, Prince Will. Banem Elvis, are you there with us?
Yeah, I'm with you, sir.
Thanks for joining us once again. We are coming to you. I guess the same question that I asked Prince Will here in the studio. You are of the Popular Actions Party, PAP. We've seen lots of reactions. Please, could you rotate your phone a bit again? Could you rotate a bit? We've seen lots of reactions from political parties coming forth to condemn killings by government, by government military. But when it comes to the non-state armed groups, parties are seemingly quiet. What could be the reasons?
Come again, please.
We've seen the killing of Treasure in Bamenda. Treasure was killed in Bamenda. The young lady killed in Bamenda. But we've not seen the kind of robust action from political parties, including yours, condemning such an attack. Does it mean that it is only acts committed by the government that your political parties, have to condemn, and those of the non-state armed groups are not being condemned?
No. That has never been the case. It is not the first time that the PAP is coming out to condemn any form of violence perpetrated in our regions, you know. So it is not like we do segregate to condemn acts perpetrated by the military and let go those perpetrated by the separatist fighters. We do condemn every single act, and we've often said that there isn't any single life that doesn't matter. There isn't any single life that matters more than another. And you know, at one point in time, when we hit hard on the government, it is as well as we do the same with the separatists. But the reason why at times we capitalize on government is because the separatists are people whom we cannot identify. You see, but when we talk about the government here, we hit out on them at times because, like we say, they have the yam and the knife, and they are recognized nationally and internationally, and they have even ratified international treaties, which means that at one point in time, based just on their actions, they could be held accountable for these things tomorrow. But now, when you talk about those guys in the bushes in our regions, at one point in time, you may never even know who actually carried out the act. So it is not that we do not condemn the act, no. But the only difference between the two is that we hit a little more hard when it is the government, because we want to think that the government could go about doing things in those regions in another different way and not in the manner in which they do it.
Is that is that not double standard to say that the separatists are not or cannot be identified? We know that we have Mark Barata, we know that we have Tapang Ivo, we know that we have Ebenezer Kanga, we know that we have Ayabacho Lucas, Sako Kmer, Chris Anu, Bo Herbert, we know that we have Beniza, we know that we have Jomba Akoro, we know that we have a lot, in fact there are a lot of others. You come now to the few generals that we hear their individual names on a daily basis. These are people whom we could identify, at least the frontline leaders can be identified, and you are saying that they cannot be identified. And does that mean that they should have a favor or a green light in committing atrocities? Take in consideration of Christopher, who was killed, the aid worker was killed because he questioned the rationale under which these same guys are operating. And we have seen series of issues. There was a young lady buried alive in Kumba, and very few people talked about this. And there is no treasure. People are not talking about it. If the government had committed an act of such, it would have been a well-rehearsed song from their party, I guess.
Thank you very much again for that question, sir. I will answer to that. Now, all those names you have named as people who are identified, ironically, I will tell you, okay, they are identified, but they are in the diaspora, you see, and it becomes difficult to get them from where they are. But now we are talking about those who actually carry out or perpetrate these actions on the ground. Those are the people I say we can hardly identify them because they hit and they run. Are we together? We criticize their actions, but unfortunately, you can hardly say this is the person who did it. We say they are the separatists, yes, but you cannot at times even identify which of the groups, because we know there are many groups of such existing in our regions. Unfortunately, it is in that line that I say we cannot identify them. Now, you talk of double standards, and you have named so many names, and there are even some that we can still continue naming. Ironically, remember, we've often said that there was a need for us to sit as a people, as a country, to dialogue and see how we can put an end to all of this. But unfortunately, the same government that is supposed to, like we say, they have the yam and the knife, they are the first who often ask us that question: with whom do we dialogue? But ironically, the same government has from time to time issued out warrants of arrest against these same people you have named. So we need to ask ourselves the question: if they know people against whom they can issue out warrants of arrest, then of course they should understand that those are the people with whom they can sit down to dialogue to see how peace can return to the regions. But the same government says they don't know with whom to dialogue, but they have names of persons they issue arrest of warrants against them. So I think that should be something directed towards the government. There are people out there in the diaspora who command those who are on what we call today ground zero, and I think the government can do all what they need to do, all what it takes, to talk with those people out of the country so that they can in turn give instructions to their boys on the ground to stop the havoc that is going on in those two regions. So it is not a matter of us, the opposition political parties. Are we together? I started by saying
we are together.
We have never criticized the government leading out the separatists. But that I still repeat that our worry is that there are things that if this government was to do, if they were to put in place, at least it would permit us to be able to have at least a certain degree of peace return to the region. Unfortunately, they have made us understand that they believe only force can prevail, and unfortunately, it's not helping situations. That is what I can say. But it's not like we do not think that it's not that we think that what the separatists do is correct. No, we have often criticized them.
But how hard?
Yes.
How hard do you criticize them? The separatists says normally they said they first started that they're advocating for the right of Anglophones. And we understand that they were advocating for the rights of Anglophones. I move now to the aspect where people are being forced not to go to school. People are being forced at gunpoint not to open their shops. People are being forced at gunpoint to live in restricted areas. Even at that, the respect of Geneva Convention is not being done by the same fighters. And you say that it's because those who are committing this act from the non-state armed groups cannot be identified on the field, but yet their leaders could be identified. It is the same situation that we have in the level of the government, where the military officials cannot be identified directly on the field. So what makes the difference? If they have commanders, that their commanders can be identified, the same separatists have their own leaders who could be identified. So my view here is that why is it that your party and the various political parties are not putting the same level of pressure on both sides? Because the same groups, nobody is let's say less of a force. If you pick up a gun to fight for something, means you are a force that you can be reckoned with, and they have a government, an interim government.
You know, my party, we have a stance which is known to everybody. We are federalists, and we've often believed that the only way we could solve this issue is on the table. Are we together? And I keep repeating to you that we keep insisting, and we believe so much that there is a possibility of peace returning to the regions if the government first could take these measures that have been proposed to them at the national and at the international level. Now, it is rather unfortunate that, like you have asked, it's unfortunate that the fundamental causes of the crisis were genuine and they remain genuine, but unfortunately some people have transformed the whole thing into some sort of a money-making machinery, or I don't know, I should call it some sort of ritual money-making, I don't know, but you know, like I said, the people who command the boys on the ground, they are not back in the country. And like I said, if you go back to our press outings, our press statements at the level of the PAP, I still say it, we have been condemning atrocities committed by both parties. It is not just those committed by the state that we do castigate. No. Are we together? So yes. Maybe when you talk about political parties as a whole, I may want to distinguish the PAP away from that. We do not only criticize the state when it comes to the havoc committed in our two English-speaking regions, but I still repeat and I say that the problem is the regime in place knows the people back there in the diaspora, and the regime even knows some of the people on the ground. Okay. And they know exactly what they can do, and they have had proposals from political parties like us, from civil society, from the diaspora and over north, on what they can do. But unfortunately, I say, they believe and want to make believe that only their own method can work, and they think that only force can prevail. And unfortunately, we are saying that this method of theirs is not working. Let them for once. They talked about a national dialogue, and at the end of the day, what they organized, we keep saying it was some sort of a national monologue and not a dialogue. Because the people that the name you cited above those are people who thought that.
Let me do a quick follow-up.
Yes.
Let me do a quick follow-up. You've raised some pertinent issues that the government has not put in concrete measures in resolving this conflict. But the Cameroon government is saying that they have done a lot, and they keep doing a lot in resolving the conflict. One is the creation of DDR Center, the Disarmament, Demobilization and Reintegration Centers, which they have asked the non-state armed groups to drop their arms to. They have created the Commission of Reconstruction. That this reconstruction is going to reconstruct the homes and private properties destroyed as a result of the ongoing crisis. That they have equally went further in order to ask those who are in the bushes to please come back and return, and that they are moving. There are series of measures that they intend to do in the days ahead, such as giving some kind of amnesty to those who drop their arms. And is that not measures? Is that not step taken by the government? Previously, the government was not allowing discussion of the ongoing Anglophone crisis, but now people can discuss that at different political platforms and debate. But yet the separatists have not shifted their grounds. What do we say? What do you say in terms of this? The separatists are fixed on their position. No school resumption from day one till now.
Good. It is not because the government says they have been doing much that we want to capitalize on that and agree with them that they have been doing much. Let me just take the reconstruction plan you just mentioned. It's a good move, yes. But how can you be reconstructing in war? Those areas were destroyed through a war which is still ongoing, and you claim you want to construct why the war is still ongoing. I say that is a move that cannot work. Are we together? The government gives us the impression that they are working, but I always say we are not criticizing this government for not taking moves, but that we are saying we condemn them, we criticize them for always taking the wrong moves. They will always want to like take the second step before the first.
Okay.
There is a need that proposals have been made. Are we together?
Yes.
Let them at least release people who were arrested in relation to this, so that maybe they could calm down the tensions in the regions, and then maybe call for a ceasefire. From there, they can create a comfortable or conducive environment for dialogue. And I still say, not the people in the diaspora, because they have from time to time issued out warrants of arrest against them. Call those people, talk with them, then they can talk with their generals on the ground. We of the PAP, we can only castigate, but we do not have any authority to give instructions to the boys who are perpetrating havoc on the ground. No, we can only give our opinion and give our proposals. But those who can insult those boys are those who give them orders from out of the country. And we say if this government could talk with those out of the country, for instance, maybe they could moderate, they could shift from their stance. But if you give them the impression that you cannot sit and talk with them, that you want to move on with actions, then the question is, what actions are you taking? When you talk about disarmament, whom are we disarming? We have so many factions. Even if a particular group decides to drop its arms, another faction continues with the whole thing. It means that what? You need to identify who is their leader, who is giving them instructions, who is arming them, and you talk with such a person to see how you can convince the person into shifting from his position. But I say, we of the opposition, we pass across our messages both to the government and to our brothers in the diaspora to understand that this crisis has gotten to a point where the person suffering is the common man.
Thank you.
If you take the issue of yes.
Yeah, we'll be coming back to you, but briefly, just answer me this yes or no. We're coming back to you. Stand by. So let's come to the studio. But let me just ask you this quick, brief question before coming to you again. If PAP was to be in position of leadership, let's say in control of the military, will you have castigated the same military in terms of poor handling of this crisis as you are doing now?
It is not a matter of castigating the military the way we do now. It is a matter of taking measures that can permit the same military to work as professionally as we have been told that they are. Are we together? We are castigating them in some of their actions, in some of their excesses. Are we together? Because they have stuck themselves to that position of force and brutality. But we say at the end of the day, it is the common man that suffers.
Okay.
Are we together? If we were in that position, we may still use the same military, but before you take the military, you must be able to first of all take measures first, and they fail before you get to that. But they have not taken measures that they are supposed to take. They believe only in brute force, and we are saying that is not the best way of solving the crisis.
Okay, we'll be coming back to you. Just stand by. Let's come to Prince. Prince, you've listened to Elvis. He has actually laid down framework that they are hitting hard. From this PAP party, they are hitting hard on the government, and simply because the government is internationally recognized both in different fronts, and they have treaties that they have ratified. But we understand that such a move only go a long way to give a favor to the non-state armed groups.
Thank you very much. Like Elvis said, I salute their courage. I salute the work of the PAP party, the MP3 party that we are. I want to ask this question because when you ask that, it doesn't mean that we leave the separatists aside. I said no, we don't leave them aside. But who has the bigger blame? Who has the bigger portion of the blame? It is the government. Can you tell me? Do you know where I can see General Man No Man? I don't even know where General Black Bele. I don't know them. But I know where the president is, the presidency is. I know where the governor lives. We know where his office is. We know where the generals work, the barracks. These are people who have international recognition. They have our backing. They have the sovereignty in their hand. They have the responsibility to actually do what is right. And what is right is to end all these things, because this killing from Florence to Treasure to Christopher, and it will continue. This is not just the end. If the government doesn't do what is right, it doesn't mean we leave the separatists aside. That is why I began by saying, if the separatists there are people we don't know. You know, there is John Bakuru somewhere, there is Chris Anu somewhere. Can we actually have a hand? Can we meet them? No.
Yes, but of course, Jumbo Akuro, these are people who have
within our national territory. Those people who are actually carrying these acts, these young people, these people who are carrying these acts, they live within our national territory. They feel the pain. They don't like living in the bushes, even though they have instructions coming from those living in the diaspora. But the thing is, if the government gives them an option, which is a responsibility of the government, if the government does what is right, these young people there in the bushes will come out. They will stop doing what they're doing. Remember, those young people there in the bushes, they don't have a job. They don't have anything to do.
From what you are saying, you are saying that we should blame the government for the killing of treasure?
It should, from the origin, the blame goes to the government. However,
is it the government that killed treasure? Is it the government? We saw video.
When you talk about
let me ask you this question. We saw video.
When you talk about blame, right?
We saw a video of someone filming treasure, telling treasure that you are black leg, that in a coded word insultive.
Of course. Let me learn, okay? When we talk about the government partitioning blames, not so, why do I still give more of the blame to the government? Because the government has all it takes to stop this. It is not the separatists are just doing what they have to do, what they think it is a measure for them to attain their objectives. But these people have no legal backing. They have no constitutional backing. They have no grounds. They are like I don't know how to put it. When I say the government has the blame, the government have. Because if the government does not take the rightful measures, it will continue. Treasure we'll have 100 treasures that will come forth. But who are those carrying these acts? What are they? That's why I started by saying we should look at the reasons, and these reasons will lead us to a solution. We cannot just be blaming and castigating every day, but let's go back to the reasons. These reasons, we have been looking at them. If the government does what is right, tomorrow there will be no treasure, there will be no and the second treasure.
How do you define what is right to be done by the government if your party was to be in position of leadership?
What is right, and thank you. I want to tell you, this government knows what is right, but what they do is they refuse to apply what is right.
My question is, if you were to be in the position of leadership, you are from a particular party, MP3. How do you define what is right? If you are in the position of leadership,
coming through. What is right is you have to look at the solution, the problems in hand, the problems we have at hand, not so, and you have the solution. How do you have the solution? When we talk about a country, we're not talking about a village, a house. The solution which the government did, which was supposed to be right, they called for a dialogue. But what was the end of the end result of the dialogue? It was a failure because it was more of a monologue. You want to come to a dialogue where you already have a prepared agenda. If we had a genuine dialogue, I tell you, it would have been the right thing. How would it have been the right thing? Because with a genuine dialogue, you would have called the right separatist leaders. You would have called the right people who live, who are in refugees in other countries. You would have called the right mediators. You would have used the right methods of mediation. Okay, that is what is right. And what is right again is the government talks about disarmament commission. With this disarmament commission, it is the right thing that the government actually brought up, which they would have done. But how wrong it is? How has this disarmament, the mishandle or the misapplication of this disarmament commission actually continue? How does it provoke the escalation of this, which has led to the death of treasurer we're talking about today? This is because this disarmament commission was there and was put forward in order to ensure that we can see how they could better educate those who are in the bushes, bring them out from the bushes, and give them a reason not to do what they are doing, which is more complemented by what the Reconstruction Commission. Okay. But this reconstruction still in itself is a failure because you can't reconstruct when you still have the guns. And what actually is making the reconstruction failure is from the disarmament, is from the bilingualism commission. How did the bilingualism, or how has it actually let or foster the death, or how did it participate that made me actually to blame the government? I want to take a critical example, Jarvis. Briefly, I was in Bamenda last week, not so. I want to talk about upstation particularly, and while I went out for sports in the morning, I saw some military guys actually doing a particular work, and what they did to me was, mon ami, viens ici, prends le machette, coupe le cycle. Imagine he who lives in Balikumbat, he who lives in Batibo, he who lives in Kwakwa, who maybe barely speaks English, not to talk about understanding French, and he knows what is happening from 2016. He thinks, and with the sabotage and with the way the brainwashing with some of these separatists actually brainwash them to make you understand that the military is a bad is somebody who only comes to kill you and not to protect you. Now, when he or she who lives in those places and sees a military man who is adamant, who doesn't want to learn English, who doesn't want to try to talk pidgin with the population that he meets on the floor. Now, when you call an ordinary man, viens ici, what does it happen? He runs away, and while running away, the military might even open fire and say this is an Ambazonia. So you see that with such acts, which is a failure of the Bilingualism Commission, because if the Bilingualism Commission had earlier done that, I will tell you the military would have changed, and the people would have had trust in the military, and that would have been the right thing that they would have done.
Thank you, Prince. We're coming back to you. Elvis, are you there? Are you there? Elvis?
Yes, I'm getting you.
Okay, let me come to you again. We've looked at issues.
Yes.
There's an aid worker who was recently killed, Christopher, who was killed in the northwest region of Cameroon. Again, I want us to get this clear. Not all of the armed groups are carrying out extrajudicial killings. Not all are doing the same thing that we are talking about. Not all of the military groups sent to the northwest region are carrying out brutality, cruelty in terms of how they carry out their operation. But we have seen cases that are attributed to both parties. And when we look at your party per se, the PAP party, how well would they have resolved this conflict as it is now in the level of a full-blown armed conflict?
I didn't get the last part of your question, sir.
I'm saying that when we look at this current crisis now, how well will your party handle the situation of cruelty and brutality as we are now in a full-blown armed conflict?
Okay, you know, like we say, the world has always, like we say, I would say, been characterized by wars, and believe you me, there has never been a war that has ended without people sitting around the table to talk. Okay. Secondly, we must bear in mind that in a warring situation, at the end of the day, there is nobody who can actually claim to be the victor or the vanquished. Now, talking about resolving the situation, the very first thing we would do is first and foremost to call the people to sit and talk. We are insisting on this thing because it will take 10 years, it will take 15, 20, 30 years, but the truth is that we shall all end round a table talking. So it is time that both parties, both factions engaged in this war understand that we must sit down and talk. And I would like to keep saying that with respect to the government in place that we have today, they should understand that we are talking here about brothers. It is not because you and I do not agree on something that you choose to brand me a terrorist that makes me a terrorist. Now, secondly, let's admit our one. If you say you are extending a hand of fellowship to someone, so that you sit and talk, don't extend a hand of fellowship to someone by calling him a terrorist. You should be able to look for another way of cajoling that person. Are we together? So that you sit down and talk. Don't misinterpret me, sir. I'm not saying like we should go begging that no, you see, no. But I'm saying that in diplomacy, there are measures, there are things that can be done to ensure that the opposite camp understands you, decides maybe to take a step back, and then you sit down and talk, and you agree on certain things, you strike certain balances. But what we are saying is this: there is no way we will return to peace if one party thinks that things must only be done through its own way, and the other person thinks it must only be done through their own way. We will, as a party, if we were to take leadership in this country, the first thing we will give priority to is to be able to give room for Cameroonians to sit down and talk, and we'll be able to identify the people who matter. When I say the people who matter, for instance, today this government has in its keeping those who were picked up in Nigeria as leaders of this whole thing. Are we together? Let them even begin from there. It is rather even unfortunate, like we were just saying, when we were made to understand a few weeks back that some sort of talks had begun between them, we were the first to come up and appreciate and give our support. But ironically, the government came out to say no such thing has been going on, and it cannot go on under the president's prevailing situation. But we are still saying that dialogue is something we must give priority to. We must learn to first of all recognize that no matter what, we are all brothers. Are we together? And being brothers means, let me say, we are a family, and there is no way you can separate your own family. But now when there are difficulties in a family, the members of that family must understand and see the need for them to sit down and talk, because, like I say, the quarreling, the fighting may go for 20 years, but we shall all end round the table. So it is important to take note of that. Secondly, like I said, people have been arrested, incarcerated. We saw people like Pat Tangem, who just died the other day, came to his bed 3 years after without being judged. We are saying that this government should moderate. If we were to take over those as one things we will do, we will identify all those who have been incarcerated or arrested with respect to the crisis. We first of all relax them. Are we together? Because there are some families out there that are bubbling with tension, because you go into a family, you have 1, 2, 3 children from the same family in jail. It becomes difficult for you to talk dialogue with such persons when their children, their fathers, their husbands are behind bars for things at times that they cannot even say, because believe you me, some might actually have been fully engaged in the crisis before they were picked up, but some are just innocent victims who were picked up and they cannot even explain why they are where they find themselves today. All these are measures that we as a political party, if we were to take over the regime, the system, the state, we will put into place to ensure therefore that we calm down the flames in the people first. Are we together? And then we can now look for a conducive environment, because we know already too that those in the diaspora too have often said they are willing to talk. But the problem is they will not accept to come and talk in this country. And you understand why. A country that has given warrants of arrest, issued warrants of arrest against you, you cannot claim to be secured if you were to come back into that same place for talks. But now give room for them to sit elsewhere in a neutral ground where they feel a little more comfortable, and you meet them there and you guys all talk and see how together we can come to a compromise. Remember, the government says we remain one and indivisible. The other persons say the country has to go its two separate ways. But I want to think that if there was room for dialogue, maybe the two parties, the two factions could strike a balance, and then maybe we find ourselves somewhere. So I think as a political formation, that is what we can do to ensure that peace returns to the regions.
And what is your party saying? And what is your party saying? You said the government says we remain one and indivisible. What is your party saying? Your party goes for separation?
Thank you very much for that question. We are federalists, and I want to think just from that you understand therefore who we are. We are not for separation, but we want to believe that people should be given the autonomy in this country to be able to manage their own affairs, to be able to feel that they belong to a country that is theirs. That's who we are.
Okay, thank you very much. We are slowly but running out of time. Before your last word, Prince, before we go.
Okay. Sincerely, we do condemn all these acts of vandalism, brutality carried by the separatists, but we still hit hard on the table that it is the legal obligation of the state to take these measures in order to ensure that all these acts of vandalism committed by the separatists don't continue, because the government has the key to this. But coming to the separatists, you have what we can only give them is a moral obligation, because you and I, none of us have the mandate to talk to them. Imagine I go in front of Ebenezer Kwangwa, I go in front of Chris Anu, or MP3 go in front of them to talk to them. They'll ask you, okay, you've come to talk with us. What if we give you a complaint? Can you solve it? Of course, we don't have that mandate. If you have, but the government has that mandate to do all. And we have to understand that the government seems to be doing everything humanly possible for this crisis not to end, because most of them are eating fat from the crisis.
How do you say the government is doing
why do I say so?
For this crisis
of recent, we heard there was an announcement of the President Buhari to come to Cameroon. I would think one of the main agenda was to resolve to talk about the Anglophone crisis, which was later cancelled. We saw
so cancelling means that the government doesn't want the crisis to end.
If you have an emergent an urgent problem like the one we have, and you keep cancelling appointment with state leaders, what happened in Mali? They had why did EBK did not annul that of Mali? So you see that then not only that, it goes further.
You work in the presidency.
It goes further to what further confirms this is the fact that we saw of late the separatists, Ayuk Siseko, took onto the social media and said they had a meeting with the government authorities or those representing the government in order to see how they can talk about this issue, which all of us applaud to. My party was one of those parties that actually took and applauded the initiative. But what happened? 3 days after or 2 days after, the communication minister comes out and says, no, all those are rubbish. Ban of rubbish, we are not talking. So if you are not talking, your national assembly, no.
Not say rubbish.
In other words, that's what we're saying. That they didn't have. So the National Assembly has had all the sessions of the year, and they haven't said anything concerning the crisis.
Cameroonians are watching. Cameroonians are watching to say that they said rubbish. I think it's a sweeping statement. I am a journalist. It's good so that we spare
with what happened with Treasure.
The government
Treasure was killed, and what they said is rubbish.
This is what the government said. No, this is what the government said.
What they said is rubbish. Tomorrow we don't know who will die. Everything they're saying is rubbish.
This is what the government said. That the fact is the government said the fact presented by the separatists or presented by the public opinion on social media is not accurate. It's not accurate. Something like the facts are not accurate. It doesn't state that the facts they are rubbish. The government acknowledged it did not.
Did they give us what is accurate?
The government did not refuse that. They did not. Did
they give us what is accurate? So when you
say rubbish, is like the government sent out a communique saying that those are rubbish. That's what you're saying.
Look, I said in other words what they did, because we know the communique. We saw it. They came out and said that actually what they said, what the Sisiko actually said is not accurate with what they are saying. But what was their response to that? Did they tell us if they are planning any other meeting with them that we should know? Because we know any meeting with them will be a step forward, but they haven't taken a single step forward to that. And to continue with the fact that
conclusively, we are out of time.
Conclusively, I want to beg on all the young people back there in the separatists that have engaged themselves. We know it is not your fervent wish to do what you're doing, but please stop, because these people you're killing, they're your own brothers and your sisters. I want to use this occasion to once more remember Rudolph Dollar Mangabe, which yesterday it was about 114 years since he left us. He died, and so many others died for Cameroon. They didn't die for us to be killing each other. They wanted us to see how we can do. So please stop. You're killing your own brothers. What happened when you kill all of them because you want to put in your ideology? Tomorrow, who are those that will live in that place? You want to fix a safe haven for them, but you're killing them all. Please, let's use the right means. Before now, you started with ghost town and other means which were not as square as what you're doing. So please, take upon you have those moral obligation, but the state, you have the legal obligation, and if you don't do that, know that the people will take it. Thank you very much.
Elvis, your last word before we take leave of you. Elvis, your last word before we take leave of you. Are you getting us? Your last word before we take leave of you. We are ending the program. We are saying your last word before we take leave of you. Your last word.
Okay. Well, my last words will simply go to the warring camps. That is the government of Cameroon and the fighters on the ground. We call on them to moderate in their actions, because we say their actions are bringing untold suffering and pain to the people, to the innocent civilians in those two regions. So we call on them to moderate, and we are calling on this regime particularly to put in place, to try to implement all what has been given to them as advice by both Cameroonians at the national and international level and other NGOs, so that at least peace can return into those two regions. They should stop wanting to think that they can always take the second steps before the first. There are so many things that have been advised on them to do. There are so many things that have been proposed, and we think that if they put these things into place, at least it will create room for people to moderate in their stance, and then we can talk. They should create room for a dialogue which can be neutral, as in a neutral ground out of the country, and all those persons that we have cited here before could be maybe rally around that table. They talk. They too, they are humans. They understand. And I want to tell you that I think they feel, they know that they're suffering too. They could also moderate from their stance and be able to strike a balance with the government, and so peace will be able to return to the two regions.
Thank you very much. So all those of you participated on the program, thanks Princely, thanks Elvis for participating. Thanks to those of you who watched the program. Just to let you know that this program comes to you every Sunday at exactly 12. We apologize for the late start of the program on today's edition. We should make this clear that the Cameroon government is struggling to see how they can contain the crisis. Same with the non-state armed groups. Both parties need to understand one thing, that they must respect the rules of engagement in protecting the rights of civilians as far as the process is ongoing, because the civilians keep paying the huge price as far as the war is concerned. It is no news that those who are being killed in the north and southwest region are innocent civilians. How long shall this continue to happen, it remains in the minds of our leaders for them to understand that we are together and better in peace, and one and two should be made known to them that the people are suffering and must be handled with care. I am Tamai Jarvis. I leave you with this. No matter the matter, what matter is your matter. No matter the matter, what matter is your matter, and what should matter for you today is that you should stay out of trouble and respect the rules of engagement.